Good morning, everyone. Well, daylight saving, we made it. Now, by popular demand, I've decided to repeat the following topic. So the question is, have you ever wondered why any mental health issues are classed as a disease by the mental health and health industries, and enthusiastically supported by what appears to be highly reactive and even sensational media comments? Well, I think it's a good question. I'll tell you what I've found, present my thoughts on why I believe it is not a disease, and then you decide for yourself. So first, what has become very obvious to many is that the news media industries will support whoever is paying them the most. So many times, even the news reports are slanted as credible modern science, but if one takes the time to look, often they turn out to be merely industry public relations promotions and product marketing. Now, why does the media do this? Because that's business in the 2020s, and that's a big part of their cash flow. Ethics appears to mean very little. And another question, where did the modern medical industry come from? And just for the record, anyone can find the history of what we call modern medicine. It's actually no secret. Well, just over 120 years ago, it was decided by a couple of mega wealthy American businessmen who at the time owned the bulk of all the oil fields and the revenue that there was a fabulous financial opportunity presenting. To realize it, they had to first shut down the existing medical industry as it was known across the United States and replace it with a business model that was more efficient and that they could control. That was the start of what is now called our modern medical industry, and it was sold as modern medicine. That's the name. Pretty clever, really. Now, in order to fit this new model, they promoted this radical new idea that all human illness, including mental imbalance, was the result of a chemical deficiency. And guess what? The new industry would supply all of the missing chemicals to a quality standard befitting this new concept of modern medicine. And they would be known as the pharmaceutical medications. They also realized there was a huge potential profit in the value of the chemicals that they would manufacture and sell, to be prescribed to the patient via the universities, doctors, clinics, and hospitals, many of which they also established and funded. Now, initially, those chemicals or medicines were paid for by the government of the day. And at the time, the US economy and population was rapidly growing, and the market was potentially huge, and the population wanted it. Now, any overseas country that wanted to sell their chemical products in this growing USA market had to first make a deal with the owners of this new business model. Again, pretty clever, you could say. But they found the success rate of the treatment was not that good. They could target the obvious ailment with a slew of weird, wonderful, and very simple concoctions, many of which were a byproduct of the oil industry, which they owned, but realized they had little effect on the underlying cause of those obvious symptoms that were presenting. So they added to the biomedical model, taught in most of the universities that they funded, the clause that students were only required to monitor, treat, and manage those common signs and symptoms of disease, and with the same treatment. Never the cure, and you could never vary your treatment protocol. But the science world kept asking questions, and over the past 100 years discovered that the simplistic supply a chemical solution was relatively ineffective as a complete cure, as it did not address the underlying cause of the common signs and symptoms, health issues, or disease that most people present, which includes mental and emotional imbalance. Now, there were other issues involved which had to be considered, issues that could not be solved simply by giving a chemical as a drug. Now, that direct conflict between the genuine scientific process and the health industries exists to this day. So, around 100 years ago, the founders of this new medical industry, in their business model, now refer to a patient's illness, which includes the issues of mental and emotional health, as a disease-like state. So why is it called a disease? Simple, for marketing and funding purposes. You see, the marketing philosophy stated that a disease would prevent the innocent patient from being able to cope with the stresses of life, realize their abilities and contribute to their community. So if anything is classed as a disease in the Western health system, it first promotes the idea that the innocent patient or victim can only be rescued from the evil disease by the modern professional medical industry. They are the good guys, and only they, through this modern medicine, can do the rescuing. And there is the marketing. The disease will require a known diagnosis, which means that only then can it have a known pharmaceutical response. And because of the diagnosis and pharma response, it is eligible to receive government and insurance funding. And there is the funding, cash flow. It's got to come from somewhere. Now, the diagnosis and pharmaceutical response information is all recorded in an international catalogue titled the Merck Manual. Now, that's from Merck, Sharp and Dohme pharmaceutical company fame, a huge corporation, and it was first published in 1899, and the same diagnosis, terminology, pharmaceutical treatment and funding process will be repeated around the world. Even if they were proved to be wrong, the Merck Manual offered a lot of marketing credibility by its long history and meticulous records. Now, just a reminder from an earlier video, the so-called science used by most industries is also known as pseudo, zombie, and cannibal science by the mainstream, and their priority is well documented profit over genuine scientific process and results. Hardly trustworthy when you think about it. However, fortunately for all creatures living on this planet, any injury to our physical body, such as broken bones, cuts, bruises, etc., our body has a natural genetic default setting to always want to heal back to normal, and that includes our brain and our mind. And it does this very effectively, and it is all well researched using genuine scientific process. So even when our brain is physically injured and or when it is in a state of imbalance, it has an automatic response to want to get back to a balanced state. Yep, and every creature on the planet is genetically programmed the same way. And that's why most injuries, including mental imbalance, can heal. Now, in my opinion, that means that mental and emotional imbalance is not a disease, but either an injury, a disorder, or a state of different degrees of balance or imbalance. And that is also why mental health is classed as one of the 21st century modern progressive diseases, meaning if you do this, it will get worse or into a state of imbalance. And if you stop doing this and do that instead, it will progress back to a balanced state. And that also is well documented. Now back to our original question. Why is any mental health issue classed as a disease by the health and mental health industries, and yet classed as a disorder or imbalance by many academic science-based practitioners outside of the health industry? It appears the answer is very simply cash flow and marketing on one side, and scientific results following genuine scientific process on the other side, and never the twain shall meet in the middle. So there we go. Now you get to choose for yourself whether you call it a disease and are stuck with it forever or not. Or maybe you have another idea. Okay, nice job everyone, and I'll catch you later. Bye bye.